Did an ancient advanced civilization exist on Earth? The question is very intriguing, and the search for evidence, to support a positive answer, has intrigued mankind for many decades, if not centuries. Many possibilities have been put forward, from outright statements that Atlantis was a high-tech civilization, to the possibility that the Lemurian is the elder being who ever lived on Earth for millions of years. The idea that advanced ancient civilizations existed on Earth in the distant past has captured the interest of authors, historians, and archaeologists across the globe. Every once in a while, experts make discoveries that completely change everything we know about history. What if, in the distant past, as far as millions of years ago, Earth was inhabited by civilizations that were completely different from what we are today? Lemuria, or Mu, is a mythical continent that allegedly was located in the Pacific Ocean area, or the Pacific Ring of Fire. In ancient Japan, the Yonaguni ruins are believed by some researchers to connect with Lemuria. The islands within the Ring of Fire have ancient monuments, petroglyphs, and caves that hold clues to one of many ancient civilizations that once existed there, the most famous Easter Island. The legends of Easter Island speak of Hiva, which sank beneath the waves as people fled. The Rig Veda of Hindu mythology speaks of the three continents that were. The third was home to a race called the Danavas. A sunken land called Rutas was an immense continent far to the east of India, and home to a race of sun worshippers. Rutas was torn asunder by a volcanic upheaval and sent to the ocean depths. Lemuria, or Mu, is the name of a hypothetical continent that allegedly existed in one of Earth's oceans, but disappeared at the dawn of human history. The concept and the name were proposed by 19th-century traveler and writer Augustus Le Plongeon, 1825–1908, who claimed that several ancient civilizations, such as those of Egypt and Mesoamerica, were created by refugees from Mu, which he located in the Atlantic Ocean. After his investigations of the Maya ruins in Yucatan, Le Plongeon claimed that he had translated ancient Mayan writings, which supposedly showed that the Maya of Yucatan were older than the civilizations of Greece and Egypt, and additionally told the story of an even older continent. Le Plongeon's concept was popularized and expanded by his friend, Anglo-American explorer James Churchward, 1851–1936, though he believed Mu was once located in the Pacific. In books such as The Lost Continent of Mu, 1931, wrote that the motherland stretched from the Hawaiian Islands to Fiji and from Easter Island to the Marianas. Churchward claimed that more than 50 years prior, while he was a soldier in India, he befriended a high-ranking temple priest, who showed him a set of ancient sunburnt clay tablets, supposedly in a long-lost Naga-Maya language, which only 2 other people in India could read. Having mastered the language himself, Churchward found out that they originated from the place where man first appeared, Mu. The 1931 edition states that all matter of science in this work are based on translations of 2 sets of ancient tablets, the clay tables he read in India, and a collection 2,500 stone tablets that had been uncovered by William Niven in Mexico. As with most ancient and lost civilizations, Lemurians would build pyramids or ziggurats. These would be places of worship and sacrifice, or landing areas for spaceships. Pyramidal structures symbolize spiraling consciousness, an ascension to the place of the gods and goddesses, who reside above our reality, in a higher plane of existence. Is there an architectural and spiritual connection between the Lemurian and Mayan pyramids? And the sacred symbol of Mu is very similar to the most ancient mysterious symbol around the world. From Tibet's Aztec, Greek, Islamic, Hopi, Christian, Hindu and swastika. The Greek philosopher, Plato, brought to the world the story of the lost continent of Atlantis. His story began to unfold for him around 355 BC. He wrote about this land called Atlantis in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, around 370 BC. Plato stated that the continent lay in the Atlantic Ocean near the Straits of Gibraltar, until its destruction 10,000 years previous. Francis Bacon's 1627 novel, The New Atlantis, describes a utopian society, called Ben Salem, located off the western coast of America. A character in the novel gives a history of Atlantis, that is similar to Plato's, and places Atlantis in America. In middle and late 19th century, several serious Mesoamerican scholars, starting with Charles Etienne Brasseur de Bourbargue, and including Edward Herbert Thompson, and Augustus L. E. Plongeon, proposed that Atlantis was somehow related to Mayan and Aztec culture. During the late 19th century, ideas about the mythical nature of Atlantis were combined with other lost continent myths, such as Lemuria by popular figures in the occult and the growing New Age phenomenon. Helena Blavatsky, the grandmother of the New Age movement, writes in The Secret Doctrine that the Atlanteans were cultural heroes, contrary to Plato, who describes them mainly as a military threat, and are the fourth root race, succeeded by the Aryan race. In the 19th century, Blavatsky gave impetus to the idea of an Atlantic continent, running through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. She gave some brief history of its inhabitants, identified its location, the times of the sinking of the larger part of the continent, and the time of the last submergence of its principal remaining island. She also specified some land still in existence, as land today that was part of Atlantis then. She gave various cultural arguments for its existence. The science of her day was quite inhospitable to the idea of a continent in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, because it was committed to the idea of extreme gradualism. It was Blavatsky who brought the attention of the Western world to Atlantis. This has been almost entirely overlooked. Blavatsky mentioned Atlantis in her introductory book, Isis Unveiled, published in 1877. The book was sold out on the first day of its release to the public. 5 years later, Ignatius Donnelly published his well-researched Atlantis, Antediluvian World. He is usually given credit as the father of modern Atlantis research. No doubt from the close time connection, he was inspired by Blavatsky. She should be acknowledged as the inspiration of the modern Atlantis movement. In 1888, Blavatsky published her magnum opus, The Secret Doctrine. This is a difficult work, but most seminal. It is encyclopedic. In it she gives many more details of Atlantis. In 1940, Lewis Spence published the now classic, Shadow of Atlantis. Indeed, Atlantis had cast its shadow just as she had claimed. In 1882, one of her teachers had written a letter to Sinnett, and given the exact year of the sinking of Atlantis. It was 9,564 BC. Now, more than 1 century later, hard science has averaged together time estimates from many scientific sources and obtained a date that is very close to the date given in 1882. The Piri race map enters into the controversy over Atlantis, especially in considering the view that Atlantis was in Antarctica. That map could only have been made with knowledge of how the Earth looks from a high altitude. Blavatsky had asserted that the Atlanteans, the elder race, lived in Atlantis continent, know of flying machines, and that knowledge of such machines had passed on to the Hindus, called Vimana. The odd fact of the high altitude of the Piri race maps confirms her statement. Now, the scientific evidence has placed very meaningful particular importance on these myths. Phantom islands usually stem from the reports of early sailors exploring new realms. Some may have been purely mythical, such as the Isle of Demons. The Baja California Peninsula appears on some early maps as an island, but was later discovered to be attached to the mainland of North America. Likewise, Banks Peninsula, off the South Island of New Zealand, which was originally called Banks Island by Captain James Cook. Thule, another phantom island, was perhaps actually discovered in the 4th century BC by the Greek explorer Pytheas, but was lost, and then later re-identified by ancient explorers and geographers as either the Shetland Islands, Iceland, Scandinavia, or even as non-existent. While many phantom islands appear never to have existed, a few, such as, perhaps, Thompson Island or Bermeja, may have been actual islands subsequently destroyed by volcanic explosions, earthquakes, or submarine landslides, or low-lying lands, such as sand banks, that are no longer above water. In the 1820s, British explorers on a ship called the Emerald reported sightings of an island south of the Macquarie Island, between New Zealand and Antarctica. Captain William Elliot and his crew wrote that the landmass, later called Emerald Island, after the ship he was sailing on, was small and mountainous. However, explorers from the US who tried to locate the mysterious isle in 1840 found no trace of it. The island was later spotted by a captain visiting Port Chalmers in New Zealand some 50 years after this expedition, yet a follow-up search by Captain John King Davis in 1909 on board the ship Nimrod again found nothing. Despite this, the Emerald Island featured on maps and in atlases until at least 1987, although it was gradually removed from many during that time. In trying to explain these mysterious sightings, historians thought that Elliot and his crew may have seen what is called a fata morgana, or a mirage, similar to those seen in the desert, but are spotted in polar regions. Similarly, the Isle of Demons was a mysterious mass of land off the coast of Newfoundland that first appeared on maps during the 16th century, before disappearing by the mid-17th century. Legend has it that a woman called Marguerite de la Roque was sailing to New France in Canada, now known as Quebec, and became pregnant to a sailor in 1542. She was abandoned on the so-called Isle of Demons as punishment to live with the devils and wild beasts that inhabited the area. 2 years later, she was rescued by fishermen and taken to France, where the story became popular folklore, and was even mentioned in poems by the late 19th century poet George Martin. It is thought the island that Marguerite de la Roque was marooned on was part of Quirpon Island, in the Labrador Sea, off the coast of Canada. The Isle of Demons first appeared in 1508, and was often confused with the island of Sodanezes, which means devils in Portuguese, located in the Atlantic Ocean. According to Port Oland charts, or navigational maps, from 1424, Sodanezes was shown to the west of Portugal, and north of another phantom island, called Antilia. It was shown with the inscription, Ista, Ixala, Dixima, Satanazes, which means, this is the island called of the devils. This island was never formally identified, but along with Antilia, many historians believe the two islands to be the coasts of North and South America. More specifically, Sodanezes may have been Florida, while Antilia may be what early explorers called modern-day Cuba, although this has never been verified. The legend of Antilia is believed to have originated during the Muslim conquest of Hispania in 714. Christian bishops, looking to flee the peninsula, were said to have sailed until they landed on an island, known then as Antil Ha. It first appeared on maps and nautical charts from 1424 until the 15th century, although after 1492, when the region was more accurately charted, the island was removed from many maps. Friesland was a phantom island that appeared on maps of the North Atlantic for almost 100 years, between the mid-1500s to 1660s. It appeared on a 1558 map as an island to the south of Iceland, and continued to feature on the maps of famous cartographers Maggiolo, Mercator, and Jodocus Hodius through the 16th century. It was left off some of the early maps of Europe in the 17th century, but reappeared in 163 off the east coast of Labrador. However, by 1652, it no longer featured on the world map, and was never recorded again. Historians have claimed Friesland was part of Iceland, and later Greenland, or may have even been the Faroe Islands. However, explorers in the mid-18th century, who were responsible for mapping the waters where Friesland was thought to be, claimed the island was in fact Fair Isle, an island found between Shetland and Orkney Islands, off the coast of Scotland. In a similar region to Friesland, explorers reported sightings of an island that later became known as Thule. The island was first referred to by Greek geographer Strabo. In his reports of the ancient world, called the Geographica, which Strabo was said to have begun as early as 20 BC, he recalls an account fellow Greek geographer Pytheas made of Thule in the 4th century BC. Pytheas' eyewitness account described the inhabitants of Thule as having fertile land, in which they grew fruit, crops, grain, and honey. Yet, the area lacked sunshine, and floors were often ruined by rain. They were also believed to paint themselves blue, and ride on chariots, according to Roman poems. Thule was always shown on maps, based on Strabo's accounts, in the far north of the globe, yet the exact location varied from Norway to Orkney, Shetland, and Scandinavia. During the Renaissance period, the island was also identified as Iceland and Greenland.